Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be telling you all about the books that I am most anticipating in 2021. Before I get into that, I just wanted to tell you guys that I am so appreciative of like the outpouring of amazing welcoming comments on my first video back on my 2021 goals video. I really appreciated it and it really made me feel really good about coming back, and yeah, just thank you. So a new thing this year with this list is that instead of breaking down my list into genres and into adult versus young adult, I decided that I'm going to combine everything into one list, and instead of doing one video at the beginning of the year telling you all about the releases for the entire year, I'm going to do quarterly release videos. So this first one's going to be covering releases that come out in January, February, and March. And then the next video will be April, May, June, and then July, August, September, and then October, November, December. Part of the reason that I wanted to break things up this way is because there were so many delays last year in publishing with obviously everything that we went through in 2020. So there are still some books that have been pushed back. There are still some dates that I feel like are kind of uncertain, but I'm hoping for the best with releases in the first 3 months. So ideally none of these should change since they are so close to publication. Obviously there is always a chance that something could still get pushed back, but since they're not too far off, I'm really hoping that these ones will stay in their release dates. Okay, so the first 3 books that I'm going to talk about all came out on January 5th, so they're already out right now. I just kind of want to do honorable mentions for them. The first one is The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. I talked about this one in my TBR video, and I pre-ordered a copy for myself, and then the publisher actually also sent me a copy, so now I have 2 copies of this book. This is a Jane Eyre inspired thriller. It follows a girl who is a dog walker in the South. She ends up meeting this guy Eddie, who is recently widowed, and then she kind of ends up living in the shadow of his previous wife, Bee. So I'm also kind of getting Rebecca vibes from it, but I've heard very good things from people who have read it already, and I'm planning on reading this one next week, but technically this week when you see this video. The next book, which I also talked about in my TBR video, is Lore by Alexandra Bracken. This one also came out on January 5th, and this one was also sent to me by the publisher, but I've been so looking forward to it because it is a Greek mythology story, but it's set in modern day New York City. We're following a character named Lore who is trying to stay away from the people that are coming back for this hunt, which is like a punishment that was set upon them from the gods for a past rebellion. It sounds like it's going to be really good, and this is another one that I'm also planning on reading this month. And then the last book I'm going to talk about that also came out on January 5th is Happily Ever Afters by Elise Bryant. It's described as Jane the Virgin meets To All the Boys I Loved Before, and I absolutely love both of those properties, so it's already gotten my attention just with the comp titles. This one follows an aspiring romance writer named Tessa, and she decides to start writing herself because she doesn't really ever see herself reflected in the pages of the romance novels that she likes to read. She ends up getting accepted into a writing program, but once she's accepted, it seems like writer's block is kind of setting in, so her friend Caroline, who is her best friend and most devoted reader, comes to her aid with a list of romance novel inspired steps that Tessa can kind of implement in her real life to get inspiration for her writing. I tend to really like books that have a character following a list to try to accomplish a goal in their life, and it sounds like we're also going to get a sweet romance along the way for Tessa, so I'm quite excited for this one. And also this cover is just super beautiful. Next on my list, and actually out today, is You Have a Match by Emma Lord, and this one I also talked about in my TBR video. I've been dying for Emma Lord's next book release. I won't go too much into depth about this one because again, I did already talk about it in my TBR video, but this one follows a girl named Abby who gets a DNA test, and she finds out that she has a secret sister who is like an Instagram famous influencer. The two of them devise a plan to meet up over the summer at a camp and get to know each other and find out that they could not be more different from one another, but it's supposed to be a very hard-hitting, emotional kind of contemporary because we're also dealing with them trying to understand why Abby's parents gave Savannah, who is her sister, up for adoption but decided to keep Abby. So it sounds like it's gonna make me cry. Next up, and also out today, is Tales from the Hinterland by Melissa Albert. This is a book that I've been really looking forward to ever since I first read The Hazelwood, years ago when that one came out. Tales from the Hinterland is like the novel within a novel. So in the Hazelwood, our main character's grandmother, Althea, that's written this book of very dark fairy tales that has garnered a cult following. And we only got snippets of those fairy tales in the Hazelwood because they were pretty intertwined with the story of everything going on there. Melissa Albert wrote a separate book so we can get the full experience of all 12 of those fairy tales, and I have been so excited for it ever since it was announced. I thought it was going to come out a while ago, and then she ended up releasing The Night Country, which was the sequel to the Hazelwood, first, and now we're finally getting this book. And it's actually 13 fairy tales. I can't remember if I said the number or if I said 12 by accident, but it's 13. Then on January 26th, I'm really looking forward to reading The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is a book that follows two public radio show co-hosts that despise each other. The network that they work for is in trouble, so Shay comes up with an idea that she thinks might appeal to people, and basically the premise is that she wants to have a radio show where exes come on and give relationship advice to people. Her network thinks that it's a great idea, and then they end up making Dominic her co-host because they think it's perfect that the two of them also already despise each other. Obviously, things are going to start changing because this is an enemies to lovers romance. So Shay and Dominic are obviously going to fall in love along the way as their show is garnering acclaim, and I would imagine there's going to be something about them needing to keep up the public persona of being enemies while secretly being in love with each other. And the last January release that I want to talk about is A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer. This is the third book in the Cursebreaker series, and I read and loved the first one, which was A Curse So Dark and Lonely. The series follows Harper, and she is a girl from Washington, D.C. She has cerebral palsy, and from what I've read from Own Voices people, it's very excellent representation of cerebral palsy. And she gets transported into this fantasy world where she is going to try to help the kingdom break the curse that is upon them. It's a Beauty and the Beast inspired fantasy retelling. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I haven't read the second book yet. I've kind of had been putting it off, but now that the third one's coming out, I think it's time to read both of them like back to back. I know that the second one actually follows a different set of characters that we do meet within the first book, and then this final book should tie up the whole overarching story for all characters involved. Next on my list is Love is a Revolution by Renee Watson. This is a new young adult rom-com, and it sounds like it's going to be super cute. We are following a plus-size girl named Nala, and she agrees to go to an open mic night for one of her friend's birthdays. And while she's there, the MC of the night is a guy named Ty Brown, and she finds herself like kind of falling in love with him and very attracted to him after that first initial meeting. And as she gets to know him a little bit more, she finds out that Ty is actually a very passionate activist, and Nala is not so much. She definitely prefers like staying home and watching movies and going out for ice cream with friends and stuff. So she tells some white lies to kind of get closer to Ty and to make it seem like they have more in common than they actually do. But as they continue to get closer to one another, the lies are obviously kind of challenging to keep up with, but it sounds like it's going to be a very cute romance nonetheless. I'm hoping that love will conquer the initial white lies there. And Love is a Revolution comes out on February 2nd. Then also on February 2nd, I'm really looking forward to Finlay, Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano. Elle Cosimano released a YA fantasy book last year called Seasons of the Storm, but this is her first adult book. The synopsis online is like pretty short and to the point, but I am extremely intrigued by the little bit of information that I read about it. So it's the first book in a new mystery series that's following a struggling suspense novelist, obviously named Finlay Donovan. And it says that her fiction treads dangerously close to the truth as she becomes entangled in real-life murder investigations. And she is also a single mom, and that is all that they gave away in the synopsis. Then on February 16th, I'm looking forward to A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. Obviously, I think everyone knew this was going to be on this list. I just talked about how I want to reread the ACOTAR series in preparation for this release. I am someone that loves Sarah J. Maas's writing. I have always loved her characters, I've always loved her plot lines, and I'm very excited to see what she is coming out with next, and also to be returning to the world of Prythian because I really enjoyed those books. Then on February 23rd, I have another Fae book on my list, and this is the start of a new YA fantasy series. It's called A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. The comp titles for this one are The Cruel Prince meets City of Bones, so I am definitely looking forward to this. This book follows a group of characters who are racing to stop a serial killer because that serial killer's crimes are threatening to expose the world of the Fae to humans. This is actually rumored to be the February book for Illumicrate, and I ultimately decided to skip it because I feel like it's kind of a big investment because I'm in the United States and I don't know that I will absolutely love it yet at this point, so I could be making a huge mistake here, but I still am planning on reading it even though I skipped my subscription for the month. Then on March 2nd, I am so excited for Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. Chain of Gold was one of my favorite books of last year, and I just can't wait to see how the story is going to continue. Cordelia is one of my absolute favorite protagonists that we've ever gotten from Cassandra Clare. I think that the story through her eyes is just so compelling, and there's so much going on in the first book that I need to know, like, what's gonna happen next. I have hopes. I have no doubt that I'm gonna end up loving this one. This one I've already pre-ordered the Waterstones edition, I've already pre-ordered the Illumicrate edition, and I'm definitely getting the ebook as well because there's no way that I'm not reading this the minute that it comes out. Then also on March 2nd, I'm looking forward to Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab. This is the third book in her Cassidy Blake series, which is a middle grade series that has really fun, spooky vibes. So each book in the series has taken us to a different city. The first one was in Edinburgh, and then the second one was in Paris, and this third one is going to be taking us to the United States for the first time, and we'll be following Cassidy, her best ghost friend, and her wacky parents while they are filming their ghost hunting show in New Orleans. I find these to just be such quick, fun reads. Like, they're kind of just delightful, and they have that really fun, like, spooky vibe, so I always look forward to picking these up when they come out, and I end up reading them so quickly. Also on March 2nd, I'm looking forward to Float Plan by Trish Dollar. This is actually her first adult novel, and it's an adult romance. She typically has written like really lovely YA novels in the past, but this one sounds like it's going to be very intriguing. It follows a woman who is grieving the loss of her fiance, and then she gets a reminder of a trip that they were planning on taking together. Once she gets that, she decides that she's going to set out and she's going to embark on this trip alone. So she impulsively gets in her sailboat and she goes out to sea, but after a very treacherous night, she realizes that maybe she can't actually make this journey alone. So she ends up hiring a sailor named Keen to help with the rest of her journey, and then the pair of them end up getting close to one another and definitely forming some romantic feelings. It sounds like Keen has his own past that he's trying to grapple with, and it's about the two of them creating new futures for themselves. It sounds like it's going to be really good. Next, on March 4th, I have A Trial of Sorcerers by Elise Kova. This is also the start of a new fantasy series. I think Elise Kova has had some really interesting releases lately. Like, I got her book A Deal with the Elf King when it came out. I think it was November. I haven't actually had a chance to read it yet. If I end up enjoying that one, I think I'm gonna end up ordering this one too. In this one, we're following a girl named Ira who is a water runner, and she's used to living in the shadows until one day she decides to compete for a spot in the Tournament of Five Kingdoms. I personally really love when there are competition storylines in books, so this is really what piqued my interest. After she enters the competition and she is competing and kind of gaining acclaim, some of those skeletons from her past are starting to catch up with her because she's no longer really able to stick in the shadows when people are kind of starting to take notice of her. It's also compared to Legend of Korra, Truth Witch, and A Sorcery of Thorns, all of which I really love. So I think that I have a really good chance of loving this book as well. And then last on my list on March 16th is Namesake by Adrienne Young. I have not yet read Fable, which is the first book in the series. I really like that both of the books are coming out like so close to one another. Fable came out last year, but I feel like it was in the summer, like it wasn't too long ago. It's not a full year between books. And I think that Adrienne actually wrote them back to back and like had both of them completed before the first one came out, which I think is a really nice way to do things for readers. pages if the author is able to. Fable follows the daughter of the most powerful trader in the Narrows, and after her mother dies in an unforgiving storm, Fable's father strands her on this legendary island that is full of thieves. And it's there that Fable has to apply the unique skills that her mother taught her in order to get off of the island safely and to find her father and to reclaim her place aside him and his crew. So yeah, I am really looking forward to reading Fable and then to reading Namesake shortly after. I have seen Fable on a lot of best of lists of the year, so that is also enticing me. But those are all of the new releases that I have to talk about from January through March. I already have a good list for April to June as well, but I'll talk about those closer to when April is approaching. I know I'm hoping to get to all of the ones that I mentioned, though I do also have a pretty long list of backlist books that are on my shelves that I want to get to, and 2021 for me is going to be all about reducing my physical TBR. While I'm going in with the intention of reading as many of these as I can, I have no doubt that there are going to be some of them that I end up putting off for a little bit and picking up later. Let me know which releases you are most excited about, or if there are releases that I didn't talk about that maybe are ones that you can't wait to pick up. And that's all that I have for this video, so I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!